Close your eyes for a moment. Just close them. Let the sound of the rain come to you first. Before anything else, before any image, before any thought, simply let the rain arrive. Let it settle over you like a blanket being drawn up slowly around your shoulders. There it is, that steady, unhurried rhythm, the soft percussion of water finding every surface it can, the glass, the stone, the ancient dark earth of the hillside. It has been raining like this for a long time now, and it will continue long after tonight is over. The rain does not hurry. The rain does not worry. And tonight, for as long as you wish, neither will you. Whatever you carried into this evening, the small anxieties, the unfinished lists, the echo of a busy day, you can set it all down here at the threshold. There is nothing required of you tonight. No answer to give, no place to be, no decision left to make. Tonight, you are simply a traveler, and the train is already waiting. Imagine yourself, now, stepping out of the cold Highland wind and into the warm, amber interior of a private observation car. The door seals behind you with a soft, satisfying click, and the sound of the world, the howling gale, the rushing rain becomes suddenly muffled, held back by the thick, curved glass that arches above you like the ribcage of some great, gentle creature. The floor beneath your feet is dark, polished mahogany. The walls are lined with panels of aged walnut, burnished to a deep honey glow by the light of a single green-shaded banker's lamp that sits, quietly luminous, upon a small writing desk in the corner. You are the only passenger tonight. The seats are wide and upholstered in a deep, mossy green, the color of the Highlands themselves. You run your fingers along the armrest as you pass, and feel the soft, worn nap of the velvet, cool at first, then warming quickly to your touch. You settle into the chair closest to the great curved glass ceiling, lean your head back, and look up. Above you, a sheet of water slides and trembles and cascades across the glass in long, shivering rivers. The rain is not merely falling. It is flowing, pouring in waves, tracing paths that branch and merge and vanish, only to begin again. It is a river above your head, and you are perfectly, safely beneath it. In the distance far, Far away across the dark moors, a soundless flicker of lightning illuminates, just for a breath, the silhouette of a mountain crag. Then darkness returns. Then the rain. Always the rain. The train sighs. A deep, resonant vibration moves through the floor, through your seat, through your very bones. And slowly, gently, with a rhythm as old and steady as a heartbeat, we begin to move. Let your eyes grow heavy now. You don't need to watch for anything. There is nothing to miss. The Highlands will come to you in their own time through the glass. We are underway. The train moves deeper into the darkness of the Highlands. There are no town lights here, no street lamps, no passing headlights, no lit windows of suburban houses. There is only the black of the mountains, the black of the sky, and the endless, silver movement of the rain against the glass above you. You pull the heavy tartan throw from the arm of your chair, deep burgundy and forest green, thick as a cloud, and draw it across your lap. It settles with a comfortable weight, and you feel yourself sink just a little deeper into the cushions of your seat. Outside, the world is wild, but inside this carriage, the air is warm and still. It carries the faint scent of polished cedar, of old leather, and something else, something almost sweet and peaty, like the memory of a fire that burned in this car on many journeys before this one. The lamp on the writing desk glows a steady, unwavering green gold. It does not flicker. It is entirely, peacefully certain of itself. The train's rhythm settles into something you can feel more than hear. A low, resonant thrum moving through the carriage floor. A pulse as slow and reliable as a tide. Click and click, click and click. The wheels find the joins in the track, and each small sound is swallowed almost immediately by the great, encompassing rush of the rain against the glass. You don't need to count those sounds. You don't need to track them or hold on to them. They will simply continue, like breath, like the rain itself. We are climbing now. You can feel it not dramatically, not with any lurch or strain, but in the slow, considered way a mountain is climbed. The gradient is gentle, patient, and the train responds in kind, leaning into the ascent with a deep, even power. The rain on the glass roof thickens as we rise. The storm lives up here, closer to the peaks, in the low belly of the clouds. The drops are heavier at altitude, fuller, falling with more resolve. They drum above you in long, complex rhythms, 1,000 small percussions, overlapping and weaving, never quite the same twice, never quite random. It is, if you let yourself hear it, a kind of music, ancient and unscripted. The song the storm sings to the stone. And then gradually, the landscape on either side of the train begins to fall away. The hillsides drop. The bracken and the heather recede below the level of the windows. The great dark bulk of the mountains, which had pressed close on either side, steps back, retreating into the rain-blurred distance. And in their place, air. Open, vertiginous, storm-swept air. We have reached the viaduct. Glenfinnan Viaduct. Say that name slowly in your mind if you like. Glenfinnan. It is a name that holds the sound of water in it, of valleys and Highland Gaelic and old, patient stone. And this viaduct, this great curving arc of granite, is one of the most quietly extraordinary places in all of Scotland. Perhaps in all the world, if extraordinary is measured not in spectacle, but in the particular feeling of a place. It was built at the very end of the 19th century, when the railway first pushed its way into the far reaches of the Western Highlands. An army of navvies, Irish workers, Scottish labourers, men from all over who followed the great iron tracks wherever they were being laid worked through summers and bitter Highland winters to raise these 21 elegant arches above the valley floor. They built by hand largely, by muscle and by stubborn persistence. The concrete they poured was an innovation of its time, a new material given an ancient shape, Roman in its inspiration, Highland in its proportion. Each arch bears the weight of every train that has crossed since, and each one stands tonight as solid and unhurried as it did 120 years ago. The viaduct curves. That is perhaps its most beautiful quality, not its height, not the great drops on either side, not even the frame of mountains that surround it. It is the curve, the gentle, graceful arc that means, from the observation car, you can look forward along the train and watch it bend ahead of you, disappearing into the storm-dark air like a brushstroke on a gray canvas. The locomotive, if you watch carefully through the rain-streaked glass, is just barely visible far ahead, a pale, ghostly shape curving away around the arc, its breath swallowed instantly by the wet night. Beneath you, far, far beneath you, the valley of Glenfinnan lies in absolute darkness and rain. You cannot see the floor of the valley. The rain and the low clouds have drawn a curtain across it, a shifting silver curtain that moves in long, slow waves with the wind. But you know it is there, deep and wide, and that somewhere down in that hidden depth the river Finnan runs, cold and dark and purposeful, carrying Highland water toward Loch-Side, where it will finally grow still. The feeling of crossing this viaduct in the dark, in the rain, is not a feeling of danger. That is important to understand. It is not alarming to be suspended between earth and sky, with nothing on either side of the glass but gray storm and deep air. It is, if anything, the opposite. It is the particular piece of being held, of trusting, completely and without effort, in the structure beneath you. In the stone that has stood through 120 years of Highland storms far fiercer than this one. In the even, unwavering rhythm of the train, which does not slow, does not hesitate, does not give the slightest indication that the great open air on either side of it is anything unusual. The train knows this crossing. It has done it many times. And so, tonight you trust it. You lean your head back against the cushioned rest and look up through the glass ceiling. The rain above you is relentless, cascading in long, trembling sheets that catch the faint green light of your lamp and turn it briefly luminous before sliding away. Above the rain, the clouds move. You can see them only dimly, great dark shapes shifting against a sky that is not quite black, but the deepest possible shade of blue-gray, the color of old pewter or deep water. And then a flicker, far away, deeper in the mountains, away to the northeast, a muted pulse of lightning moves silently through the clouds. It does not crack. It does not flash. It simply breathes a slow, diffuse luminescence that illuminates, for just a moment, the shape of a high crag, the silhouette of a ridge, the rolling belly of the storm. Then dark again. The thunder, when it comes, is very gentle here. Distance has softened it. It arrives as a low rumble, more felt than heard, rolling slowly across the mountains like a great, drowsy animal settling itself for sleep. It mingles with the sound of the rain on the glass, and together they become something that is neither storm nor music, but something older than both. You find, as the viaduct crossing continues in its slow, suspended arc, that your breathing has deepened without your noticing. Your shoulders have dropped. Your hands, resting in the warmth of the tartan throw, have uncurled. This is the particular gift of a crossing like this, not the view, not the height, not the drama of the storm, but the way it empties the mind. There is nothing to think about up here above the valley. There is no foothold for worry. Everything is simply sky and stone and rain, and the steady, faithful progress of the train carrying you through the dark. The arc of the viaduct is nearly complete now. The valley floor, still invisible, still hidden in its curtain of mist and rain, drifts away behind us. The hillsides rise again on either side, close and reassuring, heather dark and glistening. The train settles back into the arms of the landscape, the stone embankments rising on either side, and the particular, suspended piece of the viaduct crossing gives way to something different. The deep, enclosed peace of the Highland glen. The rain follows us, of course. It always does. We descend very slightly now, the track curling itself between two long ridges of moorland. Through the rain-blurred glass, you can make out, in vague and shadowy outline, the shapes of the land, a rocky outcrop, the dark ribbon of a stream running fast with storm water, the occasional angular shape of a dry stone wall that has stood in this exact position through centuries of rain not unlike tonight's. The lamp on the writing desk glows on, small and steady and perfectly indifferent to the wildness of the world beyond the glass. The train clicks on. The rain continues to fall. And you are here, warm beneath your tartan blanket, in the amber glow of this quiet sanctuary, in the middle of a Scottish night, and there is absolutely nowhere else in the world you need to be. Let your eyes be heavy now. Let the rhythm of the wheels and the rhythm of the rain work together. A slow, interlocking cadence that has no beginning and no end, that exists simply to carry you gently along the edge of sleep. The Highlands are not going anywhere. They have stood for 10,000 years in weather far worse than this. They will stand all night, patient and ancient and entirely unmoved, while you rest here in the warmth. Breathe in the warm air of the carriage, the faint cedar and old leather and the ghost of peat. Breathe out and let the rain carry the rest away. We are moving along the loch now. The darkness on your left has changed quality. You can feel it more than see it. A great open stillness where the hillside should be, a flatness where there was formerly slope. The loch has arrived. A vast, black, glassy inland sea, invisible in the storm but present, utterly present, like something breathing in the dark beside the train. And it is here, along the edge of this loch, that the old stories begin. The loch has no edge you can see tonight. It simply begins somewhere out there in the dark, beyond the rain-streaked glass, and extends away into a distance that the storm has made infinite. In daylight, you might see the far shore, the hills rising on the other side, their reflections lying still and perfect on the water's surface. But tonight, in the rain, the loch and the sky have become the same thing. One continuous darkness, breathing softly, holding its secrets close. The train slows just barely, not enough to feel like a stop or even a hesitation, more like the instinctive, respectful slowing of someone walking past a very old place. A place that deserves to be passed with a certain quietness. The rails curve gently along the loch's edge, and the carriage tilts, just a fraction, toward the waterside, as if leaning in to look. And there, through the rain, through the dark, just visible on the surface of the loch, perhaps 200 yards from the shore, is an island. It is very small, barely large enough to hold what sits upon it, which is a ruin, the remnant of walls mostly, dark stone, old beyond reckoning, rising from the island's low center in broken, irregular shapes that the storm has softened at the edges. You can make out, if you look carefully through the rain-blurred glass, the ghost of a tower one wall still standing to perhaps half its original height, a vacant window opening cut into it, through which the rain falls freely now, since there is no longer any floor or roof to receive it. Just the window, open to the sky, a frame around a piece of darkness. This is what remains of a castle that was already old when the 13th century was young. Its name, in the Old Gaelic, carries the meaning of the Ford of the Water, a fortress conceived not despite the loch that surrounds it, but because of it. The water was the wall. The loch was the moat. The island itself was the foundation chosen not for comfort or convenience, but for the cold, practical safety of a people who understood that the land around them was beautiful and wild and, in certain seasons and certain centuries, extremely dangerous. The clan who built it, and whose name is now worn smooth by time, like stone by water, were not invaders. They were stewards, guardians of a particular stretch of Highland loch and moorland that had been in their keeping for so many generations that the land and the family had become, in the understanding of the people who lived here, the same thing. You could not speak of one without invoking the other. The loch was theirs not in the way a deed of ownership declares possession, but in the way a shepherd belongs to a hillside by knowledge, by devotion, by long and faithful presence. They built the castle in stages, as resources and circumstances allowed each generation adding a course of stone, raising a wall, extending a tower. It was never a palace. It was never meant to impress. Its stones were cut from the same hillsides that surrounded it, so that the castle wore the landscape's own colors, the gray-green of wet granite, the dark rust of iron-stained rock, the silver of rain-washed quartz. From the water, it would have seemed almost to grow from the island, organic and inevitable, as if the loch itself had decided to build a house. The rain falls on those old stones now, just as it has fallen on every night for 700 years. It does not distinguish between the years. It does not know or care that the roof is gone, that the floors have collapsed, that the family who built those walls has long since scattered across the world, to the cities, to the ships, to the far shores that the Highland clearances drove so many toward. The rain simply falls, on the intact and the broken, on the ancient and the new, on the living and the quiet dead alike. There is a strange comfort in that if you let yourself feel it. But the people who lived in this valley, the crofters and the fishermen and the shepherds who have walked these loch shores for generations, they have their own way of understanding the rain and the loch and the old stones on their island. And it is not the language of history books or stone surveys. It is the language of stories. And the story they tell most often, on rainy nights not entirely unlike this one, is the story of the Kelpie. You may have heard the word before, Kelpie. It sits in the same drawer of the mind as other old, half-remembered things, fairy tales and fireside legends, and the particular quality of light that falls on old water in the late afternoon. But in the Highlands, the Kelpie is not quite a fairy tale. It is something older and more serious, and rooted more deeply in the actual, felt experience of people who lived beside deep water in an age before electric light. The Kelpie, in its oldest form, is a water horse. It lives beneath the surface of Highland lochs, in the deep, cold, lightless places where the loch bed drops away and the water turns a particular shade of black that has nothing to do with shadow. It is a creature of extraordinary beauty when it chooses to be seen. It takes the shape of a gray horse, standing at the loch shore in the early evening light, its coat gleaming with water, its mane hanging in long, wet ropes. It is larger than any ordinary horse, and its eyes, if you are close enough to see them, hold a light that does not come from the sky above. The old stories say it is gentle in its manner, patient, inviting, that it will stand at the water's edge and allow itself to be approached, and will lower its head, and will seem, in every way, like a horse that wishes only to be ridden. And the foolish, the young, the unwary, the traveler who did not know the loch and its customs, might indeed reach out a hand, might touch that gleaming, water-cold coat, might swing themselves up onto that broad, waiting back, and the Kelpie would walk then, slowly at first, toward the water. But here is where the story in the old Highland telling always pauses, because it is at this point that someone knew. Someone always knew. A grandmother watching from a doorway, an older child calling out from the hillside, a shepherd who had learned the loch in all its moods and recognized something wrong in the stillness of that gray horse, in the too perfect beauty of it, in the way it stood with its hooves at the exact waterline as if it had been placed there. The knowing stopped the story, every time. And what is interesting, what the scholars who have collected these stories have noted, and what the people who originally told them already understood, is that the Kelpie was never simply a monster. It was a lesson, a vivid, imaginatively rendered lesson about the particular danger of Highland lochs for people who lived beside them every day. The loch is beautiful. The loch is dark. The loch can take you very quickly if you forget to be careful, if you approach it without respect, if you are dazzled by its surface and forget its depth. The Kelpie was the loch's own warning, given a shape that could be recognized and remembered and passed from mouth to ear across the generations. On rainy nights, the old stories say the Kelpie is more active. Not more dangerous, precisely, but more present. The rain disturbs the surface of the loch, and in that disturbance, the boundary between the world above the water and the world below it becomes, for a little while, less fixed. Things move differently in rain-marked water. Shapes that are submerged become visible in ways they would not be on a still, clear day. The loch on a night like this is a different creature than the loch at noon in summer. You look out at the water now black and rain-pocked, stretching away into the storm, and you feel the truth of that, in whatever quiet, wordless way such truths are felt. The loch is vast and alive and very old, and the rain on its surface tonight is a conversation between sky and water that has been going on since long before there were people here to observe it. But the Kelpie, in the telling of the clan who built that island castle, was not only a danger. It was also, in a particular sense, a guardian. Because the same stories that warned against approaching the loch alone at dusk also spoke of a compact, an understanding, old as the clan itself, between the people of this valley and the creature that lived in the deep water beside them. An understanding that was maintained not through power or command, but through respect, through an acknowledgement that the loch was not theirs to own, that the water had its own life, its own nature, its own rights, and that the people who built their castle on its island surface were guests, in a sense, of something that had been here longer and would remain here longer than any human stone. In exchange for that respect, the stories say the Kelpie watched. On the rainy nights when raiding parties moved through the glens, when rival clans or, in later centuries, English soldiers moved up the valley passes under cover of storm and dark, the loch would become strange. The water would stir where it should not stir. Sounds would carry from the water's surface to the castle on its island, sounds like the movement of something vast beneath, or like a voice just below the threshold of hearing. The sentries on the castle walls learned to listen to those sounds, and to act on them, and never to question where the warning came from. The rain was their signal. Raiding parties that preferred the cover of storm found, again and again, that the clan on the water island was prepared. The gates were drawn, the torches were lit, the boats were ready, and the raiding parties, who had come expecting a sleeping settlement, found instead a fortress fully awake, fully armed, watching from the dark water with a patience that seemed, to some of them, distinctly unnatural. Some of those raiders, in the stories that survived them, swore they had seen something in the loch on their retreat. A shape in the water, moving just beneath the surface, keeping pace with their boats. Too large to be a fish, too purposeful to be a current. They did not come back. The castle on the island fell eventually, as all castles do. Not to battle the records, such as they are, do not speak of a final siege or a decisive defeat. It fell the way so many Highland structures fell. Slowly, over generations, as the people who had built and maintained it were drawn or driven away. As the clan dispersed. As the roofs went unmended and the floors softened, and the Highland weather, which is patient and thorough and entirely without sentiment, worked its quiet way through every crack and joint. What stands now is what you can see through the rain. That broken tower, those low remnant walls, that empty window through which the storm tonight is falling freely. The island is still there. The loch is still there. The rain is still falling, just as it fell on the night someone first drove a timber stake into that island's soft earth and said, "Here, we will build here." And somewhere beneath the black water, in whatever space the imagination chooses to assign to old stories and deep lochs and the particular quality of a rainy Highland night, something still watches. Not threatening, not restless, simply present. The way all very old things are present, in places that have not been entirely modernized, entirely explained, entirely mapped. The way the loch itself is present, vast and dark and quietly, profoundly alive. The train moves on along the shore. The ruined castle recedes behind you, slowly, into the rain and the dark, until it is no longer a shape you can make out, just a slightly denser piece of the night, a suggestion of stone among the storm. And then it is gone entirely, returned to the dark and the rain and the loch that has kept its company for 700 years. You settle deeper into your chair. The tartan throw is warm across your lap and chest. The lamp on the writing desk glows on, small and steady, green and gold. The rain on the glass above you has not relented, if anything. As the train moves further along the loch's edge and the storm finds more open water to move across, the sound has grown slightly fuller, slightly richer. Not louder, simply more complete. The rhythm of the wheels on the track is slower now, in this gentler stretch of line. Click and rest, click and rest. Each sound perfectly spaced, perfectly reliable. A metronome set to the tempo of almost sleep. Your breathing has deepened again without your noticing. Your hands are still. The small, busy murmur of your thoughts, those last few persistent ones that always try to linger, has grown quieter. The way a conversation in a distant room grows quieter as the hour grows late, until finally you can no longer make out the words, only the soft, shapeless sound of voices, and then not even that. The loch is still with us, just beyond the glass. You cannot see it, but you can feel it, that quality of open space, of great depth nearby, of something ancient and still resting beside the train as it moves. Safe inside this warm carriage, with the rain above and the old water beside, you are held between two worlds, the wild and the warm, the ancient and the present. And there is nowhere more perfectly suited to the slow, willing surrender of a mind letting go of its day. Ahead, the hills begin to fold. The loch falls back. The land rises. The rain finds the heather and the bracken and the long, dark slopes of the moorland once more. And the train leans gently into its steady climb. And the storm moves with us, as it has all evening, patient and faithful as an old companion. And somewhere up on the hillside, just barely visible through the rain, a warm, amber point of light, steady and small against the enormous dark, a window is lit. Cottage window. Someone is home. That light in the window, Hold it in your mind for a moment. Don't let it go just yet. A single amber square, set into a wall of dark stone, burning steadily against the full weight of the Highland storm. From the train, from this distance, it is very small, no larger, really, than the flame of a candle held at arm's length. And yet it pulls the eye with a force entirely disproportionate to its size, the way all lit windows pull the eye on dark and rainy nights. There is something ancient in that reflex, something written into us long before we had words for it. The instinct that says, there is warmth there is shelter, someone is inside. The cottage sits on a low rise of moorland, perhaps a quarter-mile from the track, connected to the world by a single lane that has almost certainly become a small river tonight, the storm water running freely down its ruts toward the loch below. The building itself is not large, a traditional Highland croft cottage, long and low, built from the same dark stone that the hillside around it is made of. Its walls are thick. They were built to be thick. The people who raised them understood, in a very practical way, that beauty and warmth are often the same thing when the wind comes off the Atlantic in November, and that a wall's job is not to impress but to hold. The roof is slate, and the rain on slate has its own particular sound, harder, more percussive than rain on glass, with a clarity to each individual drop that the softness of water on water never quite achieves. From inside that cottage, the rain would be a constant, complex music overhead, played on 1,000 small drums, never the same rhythm twice, never pausing to rest. She has been listening to that music all her life. Her name, for the purposes of this evening, is not important. What matters is what she is doing right now, at this hour, in this storm, in that warm and stone-walled room. She is weaving. The loom stands against the far wall of the main room, a large, upright structure of dark wood, older than she is, older perhaps than her mother was, its frame worn smooth at all the places where hands have touched it over the decades. It is not a museum piece. It is a working loom, and it shows the evidence of its working in every surface. The warp threads stretch taut from top beam to breast beam, the shuttle resting in its place, the heddles worn to a particular softness from 10,000 passes of the hand. The wool she is working with tonight is the color of storm cloud, a deep, heathered gray with threads of blue and the faintest suggestion of green, the color that the hillside turns in wet weather when the bracken has gone over and the heather is between its flowering seasons. She dyed it herself in the old way, with plants gathered from this same hillside. The color is not uniform. It shifts and breathes as the firelight moves across it, sometimes almost silver, sometimes almost the dark of the loch water, sometimes almost the particular, indefinable shade of the Highland sky at the moment between last light and full dark. She works by the light of the peat fire, mostly. The fire in a Highland croft cottage burning peat is not the fire of a drawing room grate, bright, decorative, contained. Peat burns slower and deeper than wood, with a heat that fills the room from the floor upward and a smell that is unlike anything else in the world. It is the smell of compressed time, of ancient vegetation, of bog and moss and the slow accretion of centuries, releasing all of that stored patience as warmth and light and a faint, sweet smoke that the stone walls of the cottage have absorbed so thoroughly over so many years that it lives there now permanently, as much a part of the building as the mortar between the stones. That smell, peat smoke and wet stone and old lanolin from the wool, is the smell of this room, of this particular irreplaceable room that exists nowhere else in the world, that belongs entirely to this hillside and this loch and this storm and this woman who has spent her evenings here for more years than she is inclined to count. She does not hurry. This is perhaps the most important thing to understand about her, and about the work she does. The loom does not reward hurrying. The yarn does not forgive tension applied too quickly, or a shuttle thrown with frustration rather than rhythm. The cloth that comes from a loom worked in haste is cloth that carries that haste in every thread visible to the trained eye, and perhaps even to the untrained one, as a slight unevenness, a subtle loss of the quality that good weaving has, which is a quality not so different from the quality of the rain itself. The quality of a thing that takes exactly the time it takes, and not a moment less. She passes the shuttle through the shed, that opening between the upper and lower warp threads, with a motion so practiced it has ceased to be a motion she thinks about. Her hand knows the angle and the force required, just as it knows the weight of the beater as it swings forward to press each new weft thread into place. Throw, beat, change, throw, beat, change. A rhythm as old as cloth itself, as old as the first person who looked at the fibers of a plant or the fleece of an animal and understood that they could be made into something that would hold warmth. The rain intensifies briefly outside, a gust pushing a heavier curtain of water against the western wall, the direction it always comes from, the direction of the sea. The stone absorbs the sound and softens it, but she hears it anyway. She has learned, over the years, to read the storm by sound alone, the way a musician learns to hear things in a piece of music that a casual listener would miss entirely. This gust, she knows without looking up, will pass in a few minutes. It is not the leading edge of something worse. It is simply the storm reminding her it is still there, still present, still very much itself. She does not need the reminder. She has never, in all the years she has lived on this hillside, forgotten that the storm was there. What she has learned, and this took longer than the weaving, longer than the dyeing, longer than any of the practical skills this life requires, is not to be troubled by it. There was a time, early in her years here, when the sound of the wind against these walls would catch somewhere in her chest and pull, would make the room feel smaller than it was, would make the distance between this hillside and any other human warmth feel very large and very cold. The winters, especially. The long Highland winters when the dark comes at 3 in the afternoon and the storms come in off the Atlantic in long, relentless processions, one behind another, so that the gray barely lifts between them. She had found those winters difficult once. But the loom had taught her something, not through any lesson or any word of instruction, simply through the doing of it, through the long, repeated practice of sitting down at the frame and beginning, night after night, regardless of the wind, regardless of the cold, regardless of the particular quality of loneliness that a remote hillside in winter can produce in a person who came from somewhere else, somewhere warmer and louder and less ancient. The loom taught her that there is a profound difference between stillness and emptiness. A room with a fire burning and a loom working is not an empty room. It is, in fact, one of the fullest rooms it is possible to inhabit. Full of the warmth of the fire and the smell of the peat and the sound of the rain and the slow, accumulating presence of the cloth that is growing, thread by thread, under the hands. Full of the knowledge that each throw of the shuttle is adding something, not dramatically, not visibly, throw by throw, but cumulatively, irreversibly, in the way that each day adds something to a life, whether the day feels significant or not. She understood slowly that this was enough, that it was, in fact, considerably more than enough, that a quiet evening with a fire and a loom and a storm outside the walls was not a lesser version of some other, fuller life she was missing. It was simply what a good evening was. The cat. There is always a cat in such a cottage, a large and self-possessed creature of no particular breed. The color of gray stone is arranged in a compact circle on the hearthrug, as close to the fire as wisdom and comfort have negotiated over the years. Its breathing is deep and even and entirely undisturbed by the gust that rattles the shutter briefly, then releases it. The cat has long since resolved its feelings about Highland storms, and those feelings can be summarized as not my concern. She smiles at this, as she has smiled at it many evenings before, throws the shuttle, beats the thread, changes the shed. The cloth on the loom is perhaps a third of the way complete. It will become, she has decided, though she could change her mind, she is always free to change her mind, a blanket. A large one, heavy enough to be genuinely useful on a winter night, long enough to cover a person from shoulder to foot with room to spare. It will be dense and close-woven and entirely without decoration, because she finds that things made for use are most beautiful when they acknowledge their purpose honestly and do not attempt to be more than they are. It will take several more weeks to finish, perhaps a month. She is not in a hurry. Outside the cottage, the rain sweeps the hillside in long, diagonal waves, the way you can sometimes see it doing from a distance. The rain itself made visible as movement, as a kind of slow, sweeping breath across the landscape, darkening the heather where it falls, running in bright threads down the faces of the rocks, gathering in the low places and beginning, in its patient, inevitable way, to find its way back to the loch. The water remembers where it came from. It always finds its way back. There is nothing she needs to see out there that she cannot already imagine with perfect accuracy. She has seen this hillside in this rain so many times that the image exists inside her now, complete and detailed, available whenever she wishes to turn her attention to it. The dark heather, the bright water, the outline of the ridge against the slightly lighter sky. The loch down below receiving all of it. Instead, she keeps her eyes on the cloth, on the gray-blue-green of the wool, on the small, steady miracle of thread becoming fabric, becoming warmth. There is a particular Highland Gaelic concept, and she has learned enough of the language to find it, to hold it, even if she cannot always translate it with complete precision, for the feeling of a home that is warm and weathertight against a storm. It is not quite comfort in the English sense, which can feel passive, like the absence of discomfort. It is something more active than that, more earned. It is the warmth that is because of the storm, not merely in spite of it. The coziness that the wild outside makes possible, that only exists because the wild outside is real and present and very much itself. The walls are thick because the winters are hard. The fire is built deep because the Atlantic is close. The wool blanket on the loom is dense and heavy because the person who will sleep under it knows exactly what the night sounds like from the outside of a warm stone wall. From the train, that amber window is still just barely visible, a warm, fixed point in all the moving dark of the storm, growing smaller now as the track curves away from the hillside and the cottage passes behind the shoulder of the ridge. Smaller, smaller still. And then gone, returned to the dark and the rain and the hillside that holds it, the way the hillside holds everything that has ever been built upon it, with an even, unhurried patience that does not distinguish between the old and the new, the permanent and the passing, the remembered and the forgotten. The room in that cottage, however, does not go dark simply because we can no longer see its window. The fire is still burning. The loom is still moving. The cat is still arranged in its small, perfect circle on the hearthrug. The rain is still playing its complex, tireless music on the slate roof above. The hands are still moving throw, beat, change, throw, beat, change, adding thread to thread, moment to quiet moment, in the deep and unhurried rhythm that has no destination except the cloth itself. She is still there. She will be there long after the train has moved on, long after the storm has shifted direction, long after the last passenger in the last observation car of this particular evening has closed their eyes and let the rain carry them finally, fully, gently into sleep. The train climbs, not steeply. This is not a dramatic ascent, not the kind that presses you back into your seat or demands attention. It is the slow, inevitable climb of a line that has been laid through mountains by people who understood that mountains must be approached with patience, not conquered with force. The gradient is long and even, and the engine takes it without complaint, and the carriage rocks very slightly side to side, in the gentle, cradling way that trains have on long open stretches, when the track allows them room to breathe. You are aware, without quite knowing how you became aware of it, that the journey is drawing toward its end, not with any feeling of urgency, not with any sense of loss, simply with the calm, comfortable knowledge that a destination is ahead, warm, lit, waiting, and that the last miles of a good journey have their own particular quality, different from the middle miles, different from the first miles of fresh departure. The last miles of a good journey are the miles in which you stop thinking about where you are going, because you know it is near, and you simply inhabit the going itself. The movement, the rain, the dark outside and the warmth inside, the click of the wheels on the track, which has become, over these hours, as familiar and as unnoticeable as your own heartbeat. The Highland night spreads itself around the train, vast and storm-dark and ancient and entirely, beautifully indifferent to the passage of this small, warm, illuminated carriage through its middle. The mountains do not notice us. The loch does not note our passing. The rain falls on the glass of our ceiling with the same generous, unselective care it gives to every other surface in this landscape. The heather, the stone, the old castle ruin on its island, the loch itself, the weaver's slate roof, the long ridge of the hill we are climbing now, the valley that is opening ahead. We are simply here, inside the rain, inside the night, inside the Highlands. And ahead, through the dark and the downpour, there is a light. Not a cottage window this time, something larger, something warmer, something that grows as the train descends the last long curve of track and the station comes into view, from a single point of light into a wide, amber glow, spilling from tall windows onto a rain-soaked platform, lighting the puddles from below so that they shine like hammered copper. We have arrived at the lodge. platform is empty. Of course it is. It is very late, and the storm has been thorough in its discouragement of anyone who might have considered standing outside to wait. The rain falls on the platform's old stone flags in great, enthusiastic sheets, bouncing back up an inch or two from each impact, so that the surface appears to shimmer, a continuous silver agitation that the amber light from the lodge windows turns, in places, to something almost like gold. The train comes to rest with a long, exhaled sigh, the sound of brakes releasing pressure, of mechanisms settling, of a machine that has done its work and is now, quietly, standing down. The vibration that has lived beneath your feet for hours, that low, constant, reliable thrum fades, stills, and the absence of it is, for just a moment, startling in the way that silence is always startling after long sound. Then the rain fills the space where the vibration was, and everything is rain again, and you remember that it was always rain underneath everything. You gather the tartan throw, you have been holding it this whole journey, and it is warm from you now, carrying your warmth back to you, and you stand slowly in the amber light of the carriage, and you look through the rain-running glass at the lodge. It is built of the same dark Highland stone as everything else here, as the viaduct, as the castle ruin, as the weaver's cottage, as the ridge and the outcrop and the old dry stone walls along the moorland. Stone is the vernacular of this landscape. It is what the ground here offers, in abundance and in variety, and the people who have built in this place for 1,000 years have answered the offer honestly, building in the stone's own colors, the stone's own weight, the stone's own grammar of thick walls and deep-set windows and roofs that angle themselves against the prevailing wind. But the lodge is larger than a cottage and older than the railway that serves it, and its windows are tall enough to let in, on clear days, the long, low Highland light that in summer barely sets at all. Tonight those windows pour their light outward into the rain, and the rain turns that light into something moving, something alive, each falling drop catching and releasing the amber glow as it passes through the beam, so that the space between the lodge and the platform is filled with a soft, continuous golden rain of light. A covered walkway connects the platform to the lodge entrance. You step beneath it, and the sound of rain on the roof above is suddenly loud and close and rhythmically perfect. A drum line played on old timber, full and resonant. The drops large enough and the roof close enough that each one can be individually heard within the general wash of sound. You stand beneath it for a moment, just to listen. Then the door, heavy oak iron-banded, set into a stone arch that is old enough to have settled very slightly on one side, giving the arch a barely perceptible asymmetry that makes it look exactly like what it is, something built by human hands, in a human place, a very long time ago. The iron handle is cold under your palm, and the door swings inward with the particular weight of something solid and true. And then, warmth, not gradual, not tentative, immediate and total. It meets you at the threshold like a living thing, a great exhale of heat that wraps itself around you before you have taken a full step inside. After the hours of cool glass and night air and the distant wildness of the storm, it is almost overwhelming, this simple, ancient, irreducible thing, warmth. The entrance hall of the lodge is stone-flagged and low-beamed, lit by 2 iron lanterns that hang from the ceiling on chains. Their light warm and slightly uneven, moving almost imperceptibly in the air currents from the door you have just closed behind you. The walls are hung with things accumulated over many generations. A set of antlers above the door, darkened with age. A framed map of this stretch of Highland, hand-drawn, the ink faded to a soft sepia. A row of iron coat hooks from which hang several wax jackets, still damp from earlier use, smelling of rain and heather and that particular outdoorsness that only the Scottish hills produce. And from the room beyond, the great room, the main room, the room that is the heart of this lodge in every sense, the sound and light and smell of the fire. You follow it without thinking. Your feet know where to go. The body always knows where the fire is. The fireplace is enormous. This is not a decorative fireplace, not a gesture toward warmth. It is an original Highland hearth, built into the end wall of the room with a scale and solidity that speaks of people who understood cold in their bones, who had spent enough Highland winters to know that a fire must not merely suggest warmth but produce it, must fill a large stone room with enough heat to drive the chill from every corner, every flagstone, every thick plastered wall. The opening of the hearth is tall enough to stand in, wide enough that the burning logs, and there are several, large ones, set carefully by someone who knew what they were doing, have room to breathe. The stone surround is blackened with generations of smoke, a patina so deep and complete that it has become a color in its own right. neither quite black nor quite gray, but something ancient and specific and entirely of this place. Above the fire, a heavy timber mantelpiece holds a few quiet objects. A brass candlestick, unlit, a smooth river stone, a small glass containing a sprig of dried heather, its purple faded now to a soft, muted rose. Things placed there at different times by different hands and left, because this is the kind of mantelpiece that accumulates rather than curates, that holds what is given to it with equal, unhurried patience. The logs burn with a voice. This is the thing about a large, well-built fire, it is not silent. It speaks in a continuous, low, complex register of crackle and hiss and the occasional deep, resonant pop as a pocket of sap in the wood meets the heat and releases itself dramatically. Beneath all of this, a steady, sighing exhale, the sound of the draw in the chimney, the fire breathing in the oxygen it needs and breathing out its heat and light and smoke. It is, together with the rain on the roof above, which continues, steady and faithful and entirely committed to the night, one of the most completely, perfectly comfortable sounds it is possible to inhabit. Fire and rain and fire, they have been sounding together in rooms like this one for as long as there have been rooms. For as long as there has been rain, and stone to build walls with, and wood to burn, and people who needed, at the end of a long day in a wild country, to come inside. There is a chair. Of course there is a chair. There could only be a chair, placed as this one is placed, directly before the fire, at the exact distance that long experience has determined to be correct. Not so close that the heat becomes oppressive. Not so far that it merely suggests warmth rather than delivering it. The chair is large and deep, upholstered in a leather that has aged to the color of dark honey, cracked in a fine network of lines that maps every year of use. Every evening someone settled into it exactly as you are settling into it now. You sit. The chair receives you completely, the depth of it, the slight give of cushions that have shaped themselves over decades to the form of a seated person, the armrests at exactly the right height. You sink into it with the particular unguarded relief of a body that has been held upright by will and effort for a long time, and is now finally, fully allowed to let go. tartan throw is still in your hands. You unfold it, feeling the weight of it, the coarse, thick weave of the wool, the deep colors that the firelight turns richer than they are in daylight, the burgundy almost black, the green almost the color of deep water, and draw it across yourself. From feet to shoulders, with room to tuck around you, exactly the density and weight that this room and this hour require. You are enclosed now in every sense. Enclosed by the chair that holds you, by the blanket that covers you, by the fire that faces you, its heat arriving in slow, even waves, warming first your face and your hands, then working deeper into the muscles that have been holding without knowing they were holding, releasing them one by one with the patient thoroughness of something that has all night and intends to use it. Enclosed by the stone walls of the lodge, which are thick enough that the storm outside is present only as a sound, a rushing, drumming, gusting presence that the walls reduce to something that is, from in here, not threatening but companionable. The storm is doing what the storm does. The walls are doing what the walls do. Both are entirely committed to their roles, and the result is this room, this warmth, this extraordinary ordinary peace. Outside, the wind strengthens briefly. You hear it in the chimney first, a change in the tone of the fire's breathing, a deepening of the draw as the gusting wind above the chimney pot increases the draft. The flames lean and brighten for a moment, the fire's voice rising briefly in response. Then the gust passes, and the flames settle, and the steady, faithful burning resumes exactly where it left off. The storm beats against the shutter's thick timber shutters, latched from inside, the wood swollen with years of Highland weather into a fit so tight that not a breath of cold air finds its way through the joins. You can hear them, just barely a faint, rhythmic shuddering when the wind arrives broadside, a sound like the slow, deep breathing of something very large pressing gently against the wall from outside. And the wall holds. The wall holds the way it has always held, the way it was built to hold, the way everything built honestly and solidly and with genuine understanding of what it will be asked to endure eventually holds, not through drama or struggle, but through the quiet, unwavering commitment of good stone and deep mortar and the work of careful hands. You are safe inside. Let that settle for a moment, not as a thought, not as something you examine or analyze or attach qualifications to, simply as a fact, a present, physical, undeniable fact. You are safe inside. The storm is real. The night is real. The wild, rain-soaked, ancient, enormous Highland dark that surrounds this lodge on every side is absolutely, genuinely real. And you are inside it, enclosed by it, and the walls between you and it are thick and old and entirely trustworthy, and the fire is burning, and the blanket is warm, and the chair holds you. There is nothing left to do tonight. Think of the journey you have made. The great stone arc of the Viaduct, suspended in the rain above the valley, the mountains on every side, the sensation of being held between earth and sky in the Highland night, the loch, vast and black and ancient, and the ruined castle on its island, 700 years of rain having fallen on those same stones. The old stories moving beneath the water like something vast and patient and ultimately kind. The warm window of the cottage on the hillside, and the hands moving at the loom, and the peat fire, and the cat on the hearthrug, and the profound, quiet wisdom of a life lived in honest rhythm with the storm outside. All of it is here with you now. The viaduct's stone patience, the loch's deep stillness, the weaver's unhurried hands, all gathered here in this room, in this warmth, in the sound of rain that has accompanied every mile of this journey and accompanies you still, faithful and unchanged. The fire speaks quietly, a soft crackle, a small adjustment in the burning wood, one log settling against another with a sound like a deep, contented sigh. The flames move in their slow, hypnotic way, orange and amber and the occasional flicker of blue at the base where the heat is most complete. They cast moving shadows up the stone wall of the chimney breast slow, wavering shapes that rise and fall without urgency, without pattern, without any meaning beyond the simple fact of light making shadow, shadow yielding to light over and over in the way it always has. Your eyes, if they are still open, need not be. There is nothing to watch, nothing to track or follow or hold on to. The fire will continue without your attention. The rain will continue without your witness. The lodge walls will stand through the night regardless of whether you observe them standing. Everything here is self-sustaining, self-sufficient, entirely capable of proceeding without any effort from you whatsoever. Your only work now is to rest. Let your breathing slow. It may already be slow. The fire and the warmth and the weight of the blanket will have been working on it, quietly, for some time now. Simply notice it. Notice the breath arriving, filling you, and leaving. Notice the slight rise and fall of the blanket across your chest. Notice how little effort it takes. How the body manages this entirely on its own, has always managed it, will manage it all through the night without needing anything from the thinking part of you at all. Let the thinking part of you rest now. The rain on the roof is steady. It has found its rhythm, not the sharp, dramatic gusting of an hour ago, but the deep, settled, committed rain of a Highland night that has decided to last until morning. It is not going anywhere. It will be here when you surface, hours from now, soft and rested and warm. It will be here on the roof above, on the stones of the courtyard outside, on the dark surface of the loch in the valley below, on the heather of the ridge, on the slate of the weaver's cottage, on the broken walls of the old castle and the island that holds them. It will be everywhere, faithful and complete, exactly as it is now. The fire breathes. The storm breathes. You breathe. All three rhythms, moving together in the dark, different tempos, different textures, but not opposed. Never opposed. Fire and storm and breath have always lived beside each other in rooms like this, on nights like this, in the long, unbroken human story of coming inside, building a fire, pulling a blanket close and listening to the rain. You are part of that story tonight. You have always been part of it. The green-shaded lamp from the carriage is gone now, left behind on the train. But you carry the memory of its light, that small, steady, amber-green glow that accompanied every mile of the journey, that asked nothing of you and offered only its quiet, reliable illumination. It is somewhere out there in the dark, in the quiet carriage on the quiet track, its small circle of warmth persisting in an empty room. Some lights stay lit even when there is no one to see them. The Highland night outside is vast, vaster than any feeling, vaster than any thought, The mountains that were only shadows seen through rain-streaked glass are out there now in the dark, enormous and patient and ancient in a way that makes the word ancient feel like an understatement. They have stood through ice ages and through the slow withdrawal of those same ice ages, through the long, deep time before there were people here to name them, and through all the centuries of naming since. They have worn the weather of every season, absorbed the rain of every year, watched every storm roll in across the Atlantic and sweep across their faces and roll away. They are standing now in the dark and the rain, exactly as they have always stood. And you are here inside, safe inside, warm inside, resting inside the oldest kind of safety there is, walls against the dark, fire against the cold, the reliable sound of rain that means the world is doing what the world does, steadily outside, while you are here inside doing what you need to do, which is simply this. Simply this. The fire will burn lower through the night. Hour by hour, the logs will give their warmth and light and settle into coals deep red, then orange, then the soft, persistent gray-orange of embers that hold their heat long after the flame is gone. By early morning, the hearth will be warm ash and the ghost of warmth, which will still be enough, because the walls will have held all evening's heat close, and the blanket is thick, and you will be, by then, so deeply, completely, peacefully asleep that the temperature of the room will be the last thing you are aware of. The rain will still be falling then. Of course it will. It will be falling on the viaduct, where no train runs at this hour, the rain finding its way over the parapet stones, dropping silently into the valley dark below, joining the river that has always been there, moving always toward the sea. It will be falling on the loch, where the surface that in daylight would show the rings of each impact is now invisible, everything merged into one moving darkness. It will be falling on the castle ruin and the island and the water around both, on the indifferent and timeless water. It will be falling on the weaver's cottage, where she has long since banked the peat fire for the night and gone to bed, the loom standing in the dark with its half-finished cloth, the shuttle resting in its place, the cat moved from hearthrug to the foot of the bed, where it is doing what it does best, sleeping with absolute conviction and zero apology. and it will be falling here on this lodge, on this roof, on these shutters, on the stone courtyard and the old platform and the rails of the track. Falling with the same, even, faithful, unhurried commitment it has maintained all night. The rain does not tire. The rain does not wonder if it is doing enough or doing it correctly, or whether it will still be raining tomorrow. It simply rains and has rained and will rain in the deep, patient way of things that are entirely themselves and have never needed to be anything else. Let the sound of it hold you now. You don't need to listen to it. You don't need to follow it or understand it or find anything in it. Simply let it be there, that steady, full, enveloping presence of water falling on stone and timber and slate and earth. Let it be the sound of the world doing its work while you rest from yours. Let it be the sound of the Highland night, which has been here longer than memory and will be here longer than thought, and which holds you tonight, holds all of us tonight in its great, dark, rain-soaked, ancient, entirely trustworthy embrace. The fire speaks one last time, a soft, slow crackle, a settling, the sound of something giving its last warmth freely, without reservation. The storm continues outside. Of course it does. And you are here, safe inside, warm inside, carried at last on the sound of the rain down through the last thin layer of wakefulness, through the soft and borderless country between thought and dream, into the deep, still, perfectly dark place where the rain is only a sound, and the sound is only warmth, and the warmth is only... sleep. Highland night holds everything. It always has. Sleep well. The rain will keep watch.